This is part 6 of Federalist 70. This is paragraph 22. There are only 2 more paragraphs left. And in the last paper, I mentioned that it took 3 days for the news from New Hampshire ratification convention to get to New York, which is right next to it. So this is how long it took for news to travel back then, even when they used the fastest available means, fast rider, a fast horse. So we know that New Hampshire ratified, was the 9th state to ratify. The Constitution went into effect, but notice Virginia and New York, 2 of the 4 important states hadn't ratified yet. So without these 2 ratifying, I don't think we would have had the Constitution going into effect. So keep that in mind. So I'll continue here with paragraph 22. A little consideration will satisfy us that the species of security sought for in the multiplication of the executive is unattainable. Multiplication of the executive, in other words, having more than one person to serve as president. Numbers must be so great as to render combination difficult, or they are rather a source of danger than of security. The united credit and influence of several individuals must be more formidable to liberty than the credit and influence of either of them separately. When power, therefore, is placed in the hands of so small a number of men as to admit of their interests and views being easily combined in a common enterprise by an artful leader, it becomes more liable to abuse and more dangerous when abused than if it be lodged in the hands of one man, who from the very circumstance of his being alone will be more narrowly watched and more readily suspected, and who cannot unite so great a mass of influence as when he is associated with others. The decemvirs of Rome, whose name denotes their number, 10, and deci means 10, were more to be dreaded in their usurpation than any one of them would have been. No person would think of proposing an executive much more numerous than that body. From 6 to a dozen have been suggested for the number of the council. The extreme of these numbers is not too great for an easy combination, and from such a combination America would have more to fear than from the ambition of any single individual. A counsel to a magistrate who is himself responsible for what he does are generally nothing better than a clog upon his good intentions, are often the instrument and accomplices of his bad, and are almost always a cloak to his faults. So any way you look at it, Hamilton says, any time you have more than one person serving as president, you're asking for trouble. You look at the history of the world, whether you look at Rome, you look at ancient Rome, ancient Greece, look at some of these republics from 2-3 centuries ago, 15th, 16th century, and he says anytime they've had more than one person as the president or head of state, they've always had problems. Because when something goes wrong, you don't know exactly whom to blame. In the last paragraph, I forbear to dwell upon the subject of expense, though it be evident that if the council should be numerous enough to answer the principal end aimed at by the institution, the salaries of the members who must be drawn from their homes to reside at the seat of the government would form an item in the catalogue of public expenditures too serious to be incurred for an object of equivocal utility. I will only add that prior to the appearance of the Constitution, I rarely met with an intelligent man from any of the states who did not admit, as the result of experience, that the unity of the executive of this state was one of the best of the distinguishing features of our Constitution. So he says, in addition to all the problems that we've talked about, if you have more than one president in the office, then your cost will go up. Some of these people are saying 5, 6 people counseling the president. He says, you got to find money for this, and it's not necessary. But in the whole scheme of things, he says, it's just generally better to have one person responsible and answerable to the people of the United States than a group of people, because the group of people will always pass the blame to others. We've seen this over and over again, and why should we repeat this mistake?